The modern conception of the samurai focuses on kinetic violence, a lethal force operating on instinct, deciding life and death in a fraction of a second. Much of this imagery relies on a single source, the Hagakure Kikigaki, or Hidden by the Leaves, compiled between 1709 and 1716. Tashiro Tsurumoto compiled the work as a loose collection of conversations recorded over 7 years. Tsurumoto's subject was Yamamoto Tsunetomo, a former retainer to Nabeshima Mitsushige, the third ruler of the Saga Prefecture. Tsunetomo belonged to this class of Edo-era samurai. They carried the swords and authority of ancient martial traditions into a new, bureaucratic age. Tsunetomo spent his career as a scribe and administrative clerk, far from any active battlefield. The author of history's most famous martial code possessed zero personal combat experience. This contradiction traces back to 1638. That year, the Tokugawa shogunate suppressed the Shimabara rebellion, eliminating the last major military threat to their authority. The victory initiated an era of enforced peace. For the next 2 centuries, Japan experienced no internal warfare, and the government strictly banned private feuding and dueling among the samurai. Inside the Nabeshima clan domains, peacetime governance replaced the chaos of the battlefield. Fortifications stood as administrative centers rather than active defensive perimeters. Tsunetomo was born in 1659, decades after the last swords were drawn. His generation was a warrior class occupying a society devoid of war. The Hagakure stands as an artifact of deep psychological nostalgia, written by an aging bureaucrat longing for a world vanishing before his birth. This explains the central philosophical assertion of the text: the way of the warrior is death. Audiences frequently treat this line as a mandate for suicide, or a celebration of dying for its own sake. It is more accurately a symptom of Tsunetomo's romanticization of the Sengoku period, the bloody century of constant civil war that preceded his life. Surrounded by the empty relics of his ancestors, Tsunetomo sought a way to capture the intensity of the battlefield without an actual enemy to fight. He isolated a specific variable: the friction of self-preservation. In any critical situation, the natural instinct to survive causes a split second of hesitation and fear. Standard military strategy attempts to mitigate this friction externally. Armies train rigorously, seek high ground, and utilize overwhelming numbers to convince a soldier they can fight and still survive. Tsunetomo proposed a radical internal alternative. By willingly embracing certain death before stepping out the door, the warrior bypasses the fear of loss entirely. The way of dying functions as an intellectual mechanism. By accepting destruction in advance, the samurai eliminates the psychological friction of self-preservation. The text prescribes a precise daily practice. Every morning, the warrior must vividly imagine his own death, struck by arrows, consumed by fire, or cut down by swords. By internalizing this meditation, the practitioner forces their mind past the panic of mortality, arriving at a state of mental calm and freedom. Tsunetomo constructs a causal chain beginning with the active awareness of death. This awareness leads to the elimination of friction. The mind operates without fear. This frictionless state translates into the fulfillment of the warrior's calling, executing unwavering loyalty to their lord. This framework provided a vital purpose for peacetime bureaucrats. By treating administrative duties with the gravity of a battlefield execution, a mundane ledger became a sacred task, and filing paperwork became an act of singular devotion. The Hagakure functions as a rigid psychological architecture designed to manufacture clear purpose within the stagnant void of peacetime. Following its compilation in the early 18th century, the Hagakure sat in obscurity, largely forgotten by the Japanese public for 2 centuries. It re-emerged when the first modern edition was printed in 1900. Even then, the publication initially generated very little interest among scholars or the reading public. Japan's armed forces faced a multi-front conflict. To sustain the war effort, the military required a doctrine justifying fanatic sacrifice from every soldier. Military leadership retroactively elevated the Hagakure as the definitive historical code of the ancient samurai. Historian Mark Ravina notes a critical distinction. The text showed what the 20th century army demanded soldiers believe about samurai practice, not actual tradition. The military successfully projected a modern indoctrination tool back into history, creating the global perception of an ancient, universally accepted code. Japan's 1945 defeat left an ideological vacuum. The military state dismantled and the force doctrine evaporated. Nationalist author Yukio Mishima sought to fill this void, seeking a restoration of traditional Japanese identity. Mishima aligned with a martial aesthetic, pushing back against post-war westernization. His modern commentary cemented the book's legacy, severing it from its obscure clerical origins. Stripped of its historical context, the Hagakure drifted into global pop culture, appearing as a framing device in the 1999 film Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai. Over 3 centuries, the clerk's musings transformed into an imperial doctrine, a post-war nationalist aesthetic, and a global martial symbol. The Hagakure endures because it offers an uncompromising architecture for anyone seeking control and meaning in a chaotic world.